Do you desire a woman's touch? Do you hope to go on dates where sweaty palms collide? Well, hate to break it to you, but Yukong isn't real, and even if she is, she will never love you. Or me. Hello internet! Yukong is practically the hottest mummy right now, and I have mummy issues, so today I'll be bringing you guys through everything you have to know about Yukong and how to build her. I will also be bringing up some problems that I think she has, which I also think some people aren't informed of yet. Yukong's calling is to shoot her whole team and give them that plump and juicy attack buff, which is practically the highest amount of damage boost in the game at the moment. After using her skill, she gains 2 stacks of roaring bowstrings. Every time an ally ends their turn, it decreases by 1. If it reaches 0, you lose the buffs. So herein lies the first issue. Speed tuning. Your damage healers must move after Yukong does her buffing skill. If your Bailu and Gapar takes their turn after Yukong, your damage healer will be left with a big bag of space oxygen. This implies that you have to sort your entire team's speed around just to use her effectively. And this is assuming the enemies are cute puppies that don't push you back or dominate you or just outright kill you. However, this drawback is almost nullified when you look at her ultimate, which essentially upgrades the roaring bowstrings by buffing the crit and crit damage by an obscene amount while being a single target attack with very good multipliers too. This damage increase is very much on par, if not more than what a good Bronya could do. So yeah, that's pretty impressive. Essentially, now you will have a very bratty mummy that wants things her way, but if you give her what she wants, you will be rewarded with damage high enough to boost your real life self-esteem, dude. This is her identity. If you meet some criteria, she can perform on par with even the most premium buffer in the game. If you take a look at her traces, you'll also be convinced why. Her first major trace allows her to be immune to 1 debuff application every 2 turns. At first glance, this makes her similar to Bronya, where she also has a cleanse in her kit, but it's truly though just a marketing plan because Kafka is in this week's MOC 10. If you don't know, Yukong is able to instantly get rid of her domination, which is the one thing that makes Kafka unethical. Genius marketing by Hoyoverse. Gosh dang. Jokes aside though, it's a good trace suited for supporting character. Her second major trace allows for the also unethical imaginary team. This is yet another genius marketing trick to make you stubborn. I know they're trying to get me to spend, but I keep doing it. After being irresponsible with your money, you will have Luocha, Yukong, and Welt, and you will be able to utilize this trace to its fullest potential. I've done a video showcasing just how strong that is if you want to check that out. Especially with this week's MOC as well, being mostly weak to imaginary, this team is busted. And I also just want to share this comment which made me cry laughing for 10 straight seconds. Her final major trace gets her energy pretty much, and yeah, with her needing to use as much ultimate as possible, I gotta say it is perfect. As for what you need to prioritize, it is actually related to her second problem, which is that she is a fox. Now, Foxian in this game has an increased chance to being ganked on by enemies even when you have a hyper provocative tank at the side. We've seen that with Tingyan, and Yukong suffers the same fate. And to complement such a disability, Hoyoverse gave her pretty low defensive stats as well, just to stick her head further into a pyramid scheme Telegram group chat that your high school classmate named Vincent made. Freaking Vincent did. The conclusion to that is that you have to prioritize upgrading the defensive nodes over the damaged ones. Even then, you'll find that she might just get hit a bunch of times and get wrecked anyway because for whatever reason, the enemy only targets the foxes. And then you find out you're stuck with this thing in your head because you're not really sure which is better, a tanky support Yukong or a sub DPS Yukong. The easiest way to decide is to use whatever you own. But if you're going for the tanky build, your body should be HP percent. Otherwise, if you're going for the sub DPS build, which I believe to be better since her kit allows her to do some damage as well, you should be going for a crit rate, crit damage, or an attack percent body. Again, it depends on what you have. But we have another problem. The boot. As I mentioned earlier, your damage dealers must move 1 or 2 turns after Yukong in order to get the juicy buffs. But if you make Yukong too speedy, someone like Clara will never obtain the buff since she usually is built without a speed boot. But if you make Yukong slower to pair with Clara, you'll find it hard to use Yukong to buff, say, Sealer or Sushan, which are usually speedier. Not only that, by being slower, you will also cast your ultimate less, which means less value over time. But let's not forget, ladies and gentlemen, Yukong is, however, very, very hot. It's irrelevant to the discussion, but I thought I want to make it very clear, guys. I myself run a speedy one, which I think is better since you'll cater to more damage dealers, and it also means more ultimate uptime in the long run. As for the Planosphere, a lot of people say to go imaginary damage, since her talent deals additional imaginary damage on her basic, on top of making her break the enemy's toughness more with her basic. That makes an imaginary sphere worth it since her ultimate's crit and crit damage buffs actually applies to herself when she uses her ultimate. By having the imaginary damage stat, her ult and her basic will be hurting more, so yeah. Very good value for a sub DPS Yukong. But if you are just prioritizing survival, I would just go HP% orb and that'll do. And finally, the most annoying piece to farm for, the elusive energy regen lick rope. You want this to achieve more ultimate with Yukong, and in order to achieve more ultimates with the energy regen rope, we need to spam her skills. With an ERR rope, she will now gain 33.58 energy per usage. In an MOC encounter, you usually want to charge up your ult before moving to the next wave so you can do a Chernobyl. If you do, you'll start by using her skill and ult, which gives your team all the buffs that she has, and you get 5.597 energy by using your ultimate. Her final major talent allows you to gain 2 energy every time your ally takes action if Roaring Bowstring is active. This essentially means 4 energy gain per cycle, so you should have 10 energy at the end of your first cycle. I don't actually know if they round up or not. Second cycle, you do a basic, gaining 22.38. You can't activate a trace, so that's all you get. Third cycle, you do your E, getting 33.582 and 4 from your trace. Fourth cycle, you do a basic, getting 22.388. And finally, fifth cycle, you do your E again, getting 33.58 and a 4 from your trace. And with that, you have 134.92, which I'm pretty sure they round up enough for an ultimate. The basic E cycle gets you an ultimate if you have an energy regen rope. As for her says, sticking to the good old musketeer should work, but if you want to go an extra mile, do Wastelander for a sub DPS Yukong, or any defensive ones if you just want to survive and do little to no damage. As for ornaments, Fleet of the Ageless will do everything that she needs to do, but there's also Sprightly Von Whack to think about. This set is a bit weird because you can definitely switch your Yukong around just to make use of this set. But I would say unless you have E2, you don't really need this. And there's also the problem where it advances you forward by 40% at the start of the battle, which might mess up your speed tuning anyway for at least the first cycle. So yeah, it's definitely a lot more specific, but it is a pretty usable ornament set for her. Just when you think you got her figured out, and then there's her Eidolons. By obtaining more Eidolons, you'll find that she gains energy from her E2. This gets her a big amount of energy and sparks massive joy as well, but it's also at the same time kind of annoying. With your E2, you can now use an attack percent or HP percent rope instead, and a Von Whack set to still achieve the same basic E into ultimate cycle. This is pretty massive for Yukong since she gains either more damage or better survivability without the need of an ERR link rope. However, this also means the moment you get E2 on her, you kinda gotta switch your build around or else you'll be missing out on her value a little bit. It's not a deal breaker though, she can still function with the ERR link rope, and no Von Whack. I really like this word by the way, it sounds so fancy. Von Whack. There's also other builds like say ERR rope plus Von Whack in order to achieve basic skill ult in 3 cycles. I also think this is the best one to go for, but all in all, just use what you have. Next up, I would like to focus on E6, which I think is also one of the problems that Yukong has. This is one of the weirdest E6 I've seen, but yeah, this is basically what it does. She gains a Roaring Bowstring stack on her ultimate. At first glance, you would think that is very good, but it's actually kind of weird, because usually you want to use your E into an ultimate so that you have 2 stacks of Roaring Bowstring that are both upgraded, right? But if you have your E6 and you use your ult after you use your E, you would have 3 stacks, and you can't go over 2, so you cannot have 2 stacks at the time anyway. That means if you do E into ult, your E6 would be pretty much non-existent. Now, if you're not using E into ultimate, you'll probably not gain the max amount of damage boost that you would have gotten if you had used your ultimate. So it is a really bizarre Eidolon. It makes her, well, good in probably only very niche situations where you want to use your E, let someone take a turn to decrease the stack first, and only then you use Yukong's ultimate in order to gain 1 extra stack. But that also means you need to resort your entire team speed tuning, and that is a pain in the butt. And finally, I think we understand Yukong enough to get to second base. Yep, giving her a Lightcone. You can either go for the expensive $200 one or go for the $10 one with a funny name on it. But if I were to rank them, here's what it'll look like. We got Bronya's Lightcone, which even if she can't gain the skill point effect, the damage gain in itself is just too good anyway. Next up, we got Past and Future, which is basically the weaker version of Bronya's in this case, assuming we don't have max superimposition. Then we got Carve the Moon. It's RNG based, but they're all decent buffs, and I'm sure you'll be able to use them pretty well. And finally, Dance. Adorable art, usable most of the time, absolute trooper of a Lightcone. And then we move on to the specific ones, which is Planetary Rendezvous. This one's only good if you're running an imaginary team of Welt, Luocha, and Yukong. There's also Meshing Cogs, which is usable and honestly unlocks a potential skill into ult in 3 cycles. But Meshing Cogs does not give you damage buffs, and honestly, if you want to do 3 skills, it's probably too expensive and you'll probably run out in some cases. So yeah, it's not really too wise to do that. You can though, it's just tougher to manage. Right, the boring math stuff is finally done, and on to my favorite part, the teams that we use to murder robot families. Well, I say that, but with Yukong, it's either you treat her like a bratty Tingyun that you must speak to in a certain way, or you run her in an imaginary team, which is cracked in this week's MOC, almost unfairly so. If I were to give an example of a team, I would say any team with a DPS and maybe a sub-DPS paired with Yukong herself and a protection unit is probably pretty good. So I'm thinking of Luocha, Yukong, Seela, and maybe a Tinctress, since 3 of them are in this banner. So hey, if you got 3 of them, you can just slap a Seela in there and that is a full-fledged usable team. And there you have it, guys. Yukong is certainly a strong character, but she does come with some minor issues, and if anything, I should call it criteria instead of issues. To make her amplify your damage like crazy, you simply have to abide by some of her rules. I hope this video helped you understand the Foxian punching back just like Tingyun, and good luck with your summons. Take care!